So in this next section, as we always know with change, we know that also can bring about conflict. And we want to be able to leave the viewers with something that allows them to understand conflict better, and also, more importantly, how to handle it when it comes into their situation. And so let's talk first about when we have the conflict of competing priorities. And that is when we have something that overlays the residential schedule as they think it should be that week, and then something else occurs, such as a birthday or a holiday, or somebody wants to take vacation. How do we gauge what the priorities are going to be?
We've brought up a handful of times how important your values are, and this is where priorities and values come together. Most parenting plans have an opportunity to actually articulate what's most important to us in our family. And what I mean there is your children's family. So let's just take an example of if Billy has a birthday in July. Is it more important that everybody's in town on Billy's birthday on July 13th, or are vacations with parents more important? Because we need to know that if I want to schedule a vacation with the children and I want to take Billy with me and he's going to be gone over his birthday, that's not going to be a problem for you. I don't want that to turn into a tussle for us, or a fight, or a conflict. So if we clearly articulate in the front end, our priority is special experiences and vacations with parents, and then special occasions, right? So vacations with parents, special occasions, remember that's birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and then underneath that, residential schedule, then I know I'm safe to schedule that vacation, and you're going to understand. Now, it doesn't mean I would purposefully do that, but it might be that that's the time the family's getting together in Omaha, right? So priorities in a parenting plan helps us label what's more important. Holiday celebrations are the most important to us. Okay, first priority. Well, then special occasions. Birthdays really are that important. Okay, let's make those second priority. Vacation with parents, school breaks, right? We have to sort through all those different kinds of residential time and put in order which is the top priority. And that's going to help us with residential schedule conflicts in a way that we won't fight over time.
And I have a question with respect to gauging that. How do you determine the emphasis to place on the child-focused piece of that versus the parent versus your own experience? How important Christmas might be to you, or another holiday, and yet what's the experience you want your child to have, that you can put your own things aside? Do you know what I mean?
I do. It's a tough one, isn't it? We keep going back and forth between, my own personal needs and feelings as a parent and my parent mind that stays focused on my child. And so the more I can pull myself back and say, okay, when we're looking back in 15 years and our children are adults and they talk about these experiences, what is it that I want them to say? Now, in my heart of hearts, and I'm guessing in yours as well, that they say, you guys gave us an amazing childhood and we were free to have experiences that were very meaningful to us. That's very different than, wow, I always felt pulled between you and mom or you and dad, and I never felt like I ever had a vacation or a holiday or a school break where I could just be a kid. That's what's at risk, right? So that's what we're thinking about when we think about priorities.
So with respect to then your goals we've tried to establish for co-parenting, what specifically would you put, in terms of the how-tos on how to make this run as smoothly as possible?
Well, there are going to be conflicts that are not going to be as neat and tidy as we might hope, right? And so to make it run as smooth as possible, almost all parenting plans have a dispute resolution process built in, okay? And so that's going to look different. In fact, it looks different even among our jurisdictions. We're just a county away and it looks different, and that's perfectly okay. But the general meaning of it is very much the same, which it gives parents an opportunity to alert each other to something that really they're willing to go to the mat over. It is a conflict that we're not resolving. I'm not willing to let it go. And now we're going to do something more formal. Okay, that's a dispute resolution process. And we look at, what does that mean? Well, it means that we try our best to bring our best selves to the table, that we remember that it's a transparent process, that we're upfront about our agenda. We're not doing hidden agendas or trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes or using one conflict to get another need met, those kinds of things, right? So it's straightforward, it's honest, it's transparent. I bring my best self to the process. So I'm going to say to you, hey, we need to solve this. I'm not letting this one go. Let's use an example. I really, really, really think Mackenzie should be in an all-girls middle school. I'm an educator. I think that girls belong in an all-girl middle school, and she's struggling. She was bullied in grade 5, and I'm not having any part of it. And you believe in public school, public school, public school, and we're like this. And I'm not going to let it go. So I'm going to say to you, let's go to conflict resolution. I really want to talk about this with a third party. Which brings us into kind of most of these processes have tiers to them. The first step might be to meet with someone like me, or a mediator, or a child specialist. Someone who's going to help you mediate the conflict and ideally resolve it with the help of a third party. So if we haven't been able to do it together, we'll involve that neutral person who might help us to do it. Oh, didn't work. I still want her in an all-girls middle school. We couldn't break the nut, right? Now we might loop in our family-centric attorneys, because our attorneys might help us look at the legal standing on the issue. And then I usually suggest to my parents that I'm working with that then let your attorneys guide you from there. We know that you can always go to court. We have been relentless about believing that parents are the best people to make decisions for their children. But if we need to, we always have that backstop for conflicts that we can't resolve.
And I think with respect to involving the court, I would say the majority of jurisdictions have actually a requirement that you participate in some form of dispute resolution before being allowed any access to the court. They
Like
really
you can't
do
run to the court.
Right. They really do disfavor just having you come there to be, at the very beginning of a issue, and for the most part, I think they prohibit it. So you have to show some form of willingness to participate and actually participating in either mediation or a collaborative law process, or sometimes arbitration, which actually makes a decision for you, similar to a court. And I would add that with respect to the elements of conflict resolution, what you're really doing in looking at resolving are, a handful of steps. The first is, what is the issue to resolve? So if you can learn to get past the emotional charge of whatever it is that's causing the problem, and figure out, identifying what is the issue specifically. Then number 2, what information do you need in order to address that issue?
Excellent.
And people tend to skip that step because they think they can go right to brainstorming options on, where we are in this quagmire of our conflict. And yet it's really about garnering the information we need to make the best decision.
Well, let's use the school just as an example, right? A school choice. It could sound black and white, public, private, public, private. Well, actually, there's a person involved in that, which is Mackenzie. And what if she really was bullied? Or what if her learning style was such that we might want to gather that information and at least look at it together.
Right.
That might be offset by affordability and location and all kinds of other issues. But like you said, what's the information, and can we in good faith collect that information so that we can look at the problem together?
Right. And then the next step really is brainstorming the options that come out of that. And that is what I consider weighing the pros and cons of each option, the strengths and weaknesses of each of those. And somewhere in all that, you're pretty much going to have something flesh itself out that seems to be the most logical, reasonable answer. It's amazing to me when I do this work with couples that sometimes the answer evolves on its own, and we can take it away from blaming and
I'm right, you're right.
Right, and take the emotion out of it.
Right. So we've looked at change, We've now looked at a very formal process for conflict resolution, and you know what's remaining in our last chapter is going to be talking about co-parenting guidelines and provisions that you may include in your parenting plan to really cement and help structure your co-parenting relationship. So that's what's next.
Great.